All right, picture this. You're wandering deep into the lowlands of the Isle of Skye, and suddenly you stumble into what looks literally like a custom-made miniature world. Welcome to the Fairy Glen. With these crazy, lush, cone-shaped hills, hidden ponds, and dramatic rock formations all squeezed into this one tiny area, well, it's no wonder people are instantly captivated by the whole shebang. So today we're going to unpack everything you need to know about this absolutely magical destination in our latest explainer. We'll dive into the fascinating myths, the totally real and wild science that actually created it, and of course, the practical steps to make sure your visit is absolutely perfect.
But, to really appreciate this place, we kind of have to embrace the local Scottish folklore first. The Isle of Skye is just steeped in these ancient tales of mythical creatures guarding the land. And legend has it, there are some pretty strict rules for hanging out with these guardians. Honestly, break them and you risk upsetting this delicate balance between good and evil. We're talking catastrophic bad luck here, like historically causing your local crops to fail kind of bad luck.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be looking at the magic of the Fairy Glen, the science behind the landscape, key sites you gotta see, some accessibility challenges, essential conservation rules, and finally, we'll wrap up with your optimal travel itinerary. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The Magic of Fairy Glen.
Now, despite its famous name, this spot actually doesn't have an official recorded mythological history linking it directly to fairies. Crazy, right? The locals actually just call it Bail non Cloch, which is this beautiful Gaelic term meaning village in the hills. And honestly, that name makes total sense. Even without an ancient fairy backstory, the totally unusual miniature topography of this glen feels exactly like it was built by magical creatures. You've got these clusters of hills with ridged mounds that, I kid you not, look like upside-down beehives. As you walk through these shrunken geographical features, your imagination just naturally fills in the blanks. It's the kind of landscape that literally demands a supernatural explanation. And while there might not be ancient written records, the local folklore is still wonderfully rich, and it comes with some serious warnings. First off, refer to them as the fair folk. Calling them fairies, yeah, that's considered deeply rude. They're also basically walking magical lie detectors, so honesty is absolutely your best policy here. Oh, and if you have a bright green rain jacket packed, you might want to leave it at your hotel. They supposedly claim that color as exclusively theirs. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. There's actually a super charming tradition of leaving coins pressed into the tiny cracks of the rock formations to bring yourself a little bit of good luck on your travels. Moving right along to Section 2, the science behind the landscape.
Okay, so stepping away from the magic for a second, let's uncover the violent and, honestly, fascinating geological reality that actually shaped this serene little valley. Because while the fair folk make for a fantastic story, the real truth is written right into the rocks. The Fairy Glen wasn't actually sculpted by magical hands. Nope, it was created by an ancient, massive landslide. In fact, it's the exact same geological phenomenon that created the incredibly dramatic, famous cliffs of the nearby Choir Ring, just, on a much smaller, highly compressed scale.
To put that into perspective, it has been a staggering 100,000 years since post-glacier landslides completely tore this Earth apart. Think about that time frame. Over those millennia, relentless weather and natural elements have just continuously eroded and sculpted the Tordanian sandstone. It's that slow, steady, daily erosion that softened the violent landslip into the really unusual, cone-shaped, craggy hillocks and serene valleys we get to walk through today. Which brings us to Section 3, Key Sights and Attractions. So what exactly are you looking for when you step out of your car? Well, this glen is absolutely packed with distinct features that make the roughly 1.5-kilometer circular walk a literal photographer's dream. You'll wander past these incredibly tranquil little lochans, which are basically small Scottish ponds, and they beautifully reflect the vivid greens and earthy browns of the hills. You'll hear the sound of secret, cascading waterfalls totally hidden amongst the mounds. You'll spot these ancient, gnarled rowan and birch trees covered in thick moss, sitting right on top of ruined stone foundations. And as you gain just a little bit of elevation, you're treated to these sweeping, jaw-dropping views over Glen Conan. But, hands down, the undeniable crown jewel of the whole glen is Castle Ewan. Now, despite its name, this isn't a man-made castle at all. Actually, scratch that. It doesn't even look completely natural at first glance, but it is. It's a massive, entirely natural basalt rock outcrop that remarkably resembles the crumbling ruins of an ancient medieval fortress tower. You can easily spot it from quite far away as you walk up, and if you are relatively limber, you can scramble up the steep, narrow gravel path right to the very top. The payoff? A stunning, completely unobstructed 360-degree view of all those vividly colored grassy mounts below.
It's definitely the perfect vantage point to take in the entire miniature landscape.
All right, on to Section 4, Challenges and Accessibility Issues.
Now, while the landscape is undeniably magical, we really need to talk about reality for a second. This isn't a paved city park. It is a highly unmanicured, raw, and honestly pretty bumpy environment. The terrain is near impossible to navigate for wheelchairs or strollers, and it poses significant difficulties for older visitors or folks with walking disabilities. Those beautiful grassy mounds, they become incredibly boggy, muddy, and slippery, especially after the frequent Scottish rain. Plus, if you're traveling with small children, you've got to exercise extreme caution, particularly around the apex of Castle Ewan, where the drops are very steep and completely unprotected. Oh, and for the photographers out there, a quick heads up. The strong drafts created by the moving water and the unique valley shape make flying drones exceptionally hazardous here. Definitely keep that in mind.
Because of those totally raw conditions, your choice of footwear can absolutely make or break your trip. Seriously, leave the sandals behind. Wearing proper footwear, specifically sturdy, waterproof walking boots, is the only way to safely and comfortably traverse this wet Scottish terrain. Even on a day that looks bright and sunny, the ground retains a massive amount of water, and you do not want to be slipping around out there.
Let's move to Section 5, Essential Conservation Guidelines.
So there is a major, ongoing tension in this delicate area that you really should know about. Over the years, well-meaning tourists began moving loose stones to create these large, spiral patterns on the grass for photo ops. But here's the thing. What visitors see as a whimsical homage or just a fun little activity is actually considered environmental vandalism by the locals. Moving these rocks causes unnatural ground erosion and severely disrupts the fragile ecosystem. It's gotten to the point where local volunteers actually spend their winters out in the freezing cold, manually dismantling these man-made rock circles just to restore the landscape.
So, the absolutely crucial takeaway here is to be a highly responsible traveler. You got to adopt a strict leave no trace mindset. Do not move the rocks or build new spirals. Stick strictly to the designated, visible paths, and definitely do not cross into any cordoned off areas that are there to prevent erosion. Also, you're going to see local sheep roaming freely throughout the glen. They're super gentle, but it is strictly required that you keep all dogs on leads to protect them. Ultimately, the goal is to leave the landscape exactly as nature and maybe the fair folk intended it.
And finally, Section 6, your optimal travel itinerary.
Okay, let's get into the logistics. The glen is wonderfully secluded. It's situated right on the Trotternish Peninsula, just a quick 5-minute drive from the village of Uig. Now, entry to the glen itself is 100% free, which is awesome. There is a dedicated parking lot with electronic ticketing, usually costs about £2 for 2 hours, and they accept both cards and coins. But please pay close attention to this part. There are absolutely no facilities on site, literally none. No toilets, no cafes, no gift shops. You must prepare in advance in the nearby village of Uig or the larger town of Portree.
When you're planning out your day, honestly, you really only need to allocate a maximum of 1 to 2 hours here. That is plenty of time to comfortably hike the entire 1.5-kilometer trail, scramble up to Castle Ewan, soak in all those sweeping views, and snap some incredible photos before you move on to your next Isle of Skye destination.
So let's build an actionable step-by-step strategy for you so you can avoid those overwhelming midday crowds. Because trust me, that small parking lot fills up fast. Step 1. Base yourself in Portree. It's only 25 minutes away and has plenty of accommodations. Step 2. Timing is literally everything. Try to arrive at sunrise or sunset to entirely dodge the large tour buses. Step 3. Use the main lot, but hey, if it's full, don't panic. You can just park down in Uig and enjoy a highly scenic, albeit slightly uphill, 30-minute walk along a quiet road right to the entrance. And finally, Step 4. Follow the loop, take your time, and just soak in the views.
By following this optimized early morning timeline, you are almost guaranteed a totally ethereal experience. If you arrive right at 6 a.m., the fog might still be clinging to the ground. It's magic. By 6:15, you're hiking past tranquil lochans and mossy trees. By 6:45, you're up on Castle Ewan, watching the morning light paint those green hills. At 7:30, you descend via the secondary path, and by 8 a.m., you're heading out just as the first chaotic crowds begin to arrive. Doing it this way ensures that the only sounds you're going to hear are the rushing waterfalls, the wind whistling through the birch trees, and the bleating of the local sheep. So, as we wrap up this explainer, you now possess all the knowledge you need to safely and respectfully navigate this stunning topography. But the final question I leave you with is this. When you finally visit this landscape, shaped by totally ancient forces and steeped in such deep myth, are you ready to conquer the ancient landslips of the Isle of Skye without disturbing the fair folk? Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.